The Crimson Death ravaged the Sakari with ruthless efficiency, slaughtering billions within weeks of its emergence on Zorthal. Thule raced against annihilation to unravel the plague's origins, only to find a viral bioweapon of unrivaled lethality. It infected every Sakari it touched, spreading to new worlds through unwitting carriers, all of whom perished in agony. Civilizations crumbled, planets died. The Sakari teetered on the precipice of extinction, a once mighty galactic power laid low by an implacable microscopic foe. Thule and her team combed the Empire's vast archives for any shred of hope, any whisper of a cure. They found one, in the humble physiology of a small, pre-spacefaring species known as humans. Ancient records spoke of their inexplicable immunity to Sakari diseases. Thule's analysis confirmed it. Human DNA held the key to curing the Crimson Death. The Sakari Emperor dispatched his most persuasive diplomats on a desperate mission to Earth to secure the human genome at any cost. Trillions of lives hung in the balance. Humanity, oblivious to the plague of apocalyptic proportions silently devouring the galaxy, was about to take center stage in a struggle that would redefine the very nature of galactic power. In their relentless fight for survival, the Sakari had no choice but to pin their hopes on an unassuming blue marble spinning in a distant corner of the cosmos. The clock was ticking. The Crimson Death hungered, and only human biology stood between the Sakari and the howling void of extinction. The Sakari delegation's arrival sent shockwaves rippling through Earth's fragile geopolitical landscape. Sleek obsidian ships hung in low orbit, their imposing silhouettes blotting out the sun and casting entire cities into eerie twilight. Panic gripped the masses as the world's governments scrambled to formulate a response, their usual squabbles forgotten in the face of this unprecedented extraterrestrial contact. Into this maelstrom of uncertainty stepped Alexander Kane, a seasoned diplomat with a reputation for unflappable composure and keen negotiating instincts. He found himself at the helm of Earth's hastily assembled diplomatic team, staring across a polished ebony table at Commander Thrax, the Sakari Emperor's implacable advisor. Thrax wasted no time in laying bare the dire circumstances that had brought the Sakari to Earth's doorstep. His words painted a chilling picture of a galaxy in the throes of an existential crisis, entire civilizations crumbling before the inexorable advance of the Crimson Death. The plague's ravenous appetite for Sakari flesh had already claimed billions, and humanity, Thrax stressed, held the key to their salvation. Kane listened, his brow furrowed, as Thrax outlined the Sakari's proposal, a joint research initiative to unlock the secrets of human immunity. The Sakari would provide their vast technological resources and scientific expertise, while Earth would grant access to human genetic samples and volunteer test subjects. The human diplomats exchanged uneasy glances. Kane leaned forward, his voice low and measured. "While we sympathize with your plight, Commander, we have concerns about the potential misuse of human biological data. We must ensure that any cooperation is strictly regulated and does not compromise the rights of our citizens." Thrax's obsidian eyes narrowed. "Time is a luxury we do not have, Ambassador Kane. Every moment we spend debating semantics, the Crimson Death claims more lives." As the negotiations dragged on, Dr. Eliza Reeves found herself at the forefront of a scientific endeavor that would determine the fate of an empire. She worked alongside Thule, a brilliant Sakari xenobiologist, poring over human genetic samples in search of the elusive key to immunity. Thule's eyes gleamed with excitement as she shared her theory with Reeves. "I believe the answer lies not in your genes themselves, but in the microscopic allies that have evolved alongside you. Your gut bacteria may hold the key to neutralizing the Crimson Death." Reeves nodded, her mind racing with the implications. "If we can isolate the specific compounds produced by these bacteria, we might be able to synthesize a cure." But even as the scientists made progress, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. General Zaxxas, a hardline Sakari military leader, grew impatient with the slow pace of diplomacy. In a brazen move that sent shockwaves through the delicate alliance, he ordered a covert strike on a remote human research outpost. Reeves looked up in horror as armed Sakari soldiers stormed the lab, their weapons trained on the terrified scientists. She barely had time to register the betrayal before a heavy blow sent her crumpling to the floor, consciousness slipping away. News of the abduction ignited a firestorm of outrage across Earth. The fragile trust between humans and Sakari shattered like glass, and the specter of war loomed large. Kane found himself in a desperate race against time to rescue the hostages and prevent the conflict from escalating beyond the point of no return. As Reeves and her fellow captives huddled in the bowels of a Sakari ship, Thule worked feverishly to continue their research, driven by the knowledge that the fate of her species hung in the balance. The clock was ticking, and the Crimson Death's hunger knew no bounds. Earth stood on the precipice of a new era, one that would be defined by its response to this unprecedented crisis. The decisions made in the coming days would ripple across the stars, shaping the destiny not only of humanity, but of the entire galactic empire. The future, shrouded in uncertainty, hurtled towards them with the inexorable force of a cosmic tsunami, and only time would tell if they could weather the storm. The emergency summit convened in Geneva, a maelstrom of frantic diplomats and military brass crowding the halls of the United Nations. Inside the main chamber, raised voices echoed off marble walls as world leaders grappled with the unprecedented crisis. "We cannot stand idly by while our citizens are abducted," thundered the U.S. president, his fist slamming onto the polished oak table. In the midst of the chaos, a figure in crisp naval whites strode purposefully into the room. Admiral Marcus Graves, his weathered face a mask of calm persistence, surveyed the assembled dignitaries. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the din, "I've been tasked with leading a rescue operation to retrieve our people." As Graves outlined his daring plan, Alexander Kane worked the phones, his fingers flying across encrypted terminals. He fed critical intelligence to the admiral, while simultaneously engaging in a delicate dance of diplomacy with Commander Thrax. "I assure you, Commander, Earth has no intention of escalating this situation," Kane said, his voice steady despite the tension coiled in his gut. "But surely you understand our need to protect our citizens?" Thrax's obsidian eyes narrowed. "Your assurances ring hollow, Ambassador, when your military mobilizes for action." Meanwhile, light years away, Dr. Eliza Reeves fought to maintain her composure as Sakari scientists loomed over her, instruments whirring. The lab aboard the alien vessel hummed with activity, a cacophony of beeps and clicks accompanying each invasive test. "Your microbiome is fascinating," one of the Sakari researchers muttered, peering at a holographic readout. "The diversity of bacterial species is unlike anything we've encountered." Reeves gritted her teeth, her mind racing. She knew the key to fighting the Crimson Death lay within her very cells, but how could she leverage that knowledge to aid her fellow captives? A commotion at the lab's entrance drew her attention. Thula burst in, her iridescent scales shimmering under the harsh lights. "Stop this madness at once," Thula commanded, her voice ringing with authority. The other Sakari researchers froze, clearly conflicted. Thule locked eyes with Reeves. "We don't have much time. I need your expertise to refine our understanding of the antiviral compound." For hours, the two scientists worked feverishly, poring over data and running simulations. Their progress was frustratingly slow, hampered by limited resources and the ever-present threat of discovery. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. The lab doors hissed open, revealing a team of black-clad human operatives led by a grim-faced soldier. "Dr. Reeves," the soldier called out, "I'm Lieutenant Chen. We're here to get you out." Chaos erupted as Sakari guards poured into the lab. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, scorching equipment and sending researchers diving for cover. Reeves and Thule scrambled to gather their research data, downloading critical files onto portable drives. "This way," Chen shouted, laying down suppressing fire as he gestured toward an emergency hatch. Reeves hesitated, looking at Thule. The Sakari scientist nodded. "Go. I'll follow with the rest of the data." Heart pounding, Reeves sprinted for the hatch. She could hear the thundering footsteps of her fellow captives echoing through the ship's corridors as they raced toward freedom. As their transport vessel streaked away from the Sakari ship, Reeves clutched the precious data to her chest. She knew that within those files lay the potential salvation for billions of lives across the galaxy. But the real work, she realized, was only just beginning. Back on Earth, the successful rescue was met with a mixture of relief and trepidation. Kane stood before a wall of screens, each displaying the face of a world leader. "The captives are safe," he reported, "but we've entered uncharted territory. Our next steps will determine the fate of not just humanity, but countless civilizations across the stars." As the connection terminated, Kane turned to find Admiral Graves waiting. "They want us in the war room," Graves said, his expression grim. "It's time to decide how we proceed." Kane nodded, straightening his tie. The true test of humanity's perseverance lay ahead, and he knew that every decision, every carefully chosen word, would ripple across the cosmos with unimaginable consequences. The secure comm channel crackled to life in Kane's office. Admiral Graves's holographic form materialized, his expression grim. "It's worse than we thought, Alex. Thrax is pushing for mass civilian seizures. We've detected Sakari ships maneuvering near major population centers." Kane's heart made. "Understood. I'm heading to the negotiation chamber now. Keep our defenses ready, but no preemptive strikes." As Kane strode through the corridors of the United Nations complex, he could feel the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. The air was thick with tension, diplomats and military personnel scurrying about with scarcely controlled panic. He entered the chamber to find Commander Thrax already seated, flanked by stone-faced Sakari guards. The alien's obsidian eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "Ambassador Kane," Thrax rumbled, "your species' defiance has cost us precious time. We require immediate access to human test subjects, by force if necessary." Kane settled into his chair, forcing his breathing to remain steady. "Commander, surely you understand that such actions would only lead to further conflict. There must be a better way." For hours they sparred verbally, each probing for weaknesses in the other's position. Kane's mind raced, seeking a solution that would protect humanity while still offering the Sakari hope. It was Ambassador Zalara who finally broke the deadlock. The moderate Sakari diplomat cleared her throat, her iridescent scales shimmering under the harsh lights. "Perhaps," she suggested, "we have been approaching this from the wrong angle. What if we were to offer Earth protectorate status within the Empire in exchange for their willing cooperation?" Kane's eyes widened, recognizing the opportunity. He leaned forward, locking eyes with Thrax. Full scientific cooperation, unlimited access to volunteer subjects, all under strict international oversight. In return, Earth's sovereignty remains inviolate for the duration of this crisis. Thrax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense calculation. After what felt like an eternity, he nodded. "Acceptable terms, Ambassador. Let us draft the accord." As Kane affixed his signature to the historic document, he felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity had just secured its place on the galactic stage. Across the planet, in a heavily guarded biolab, Dr. Reeves and Thula hunched over a holographic display. Sweat beaded on Reeves's forehead as she manipulated the glowing strands of a protein structure. "There," she exclaimed. "If we modify this receptor site, it should amplify the antiviral properties exponentially." Thul's multifaceted eyes gleamed with excitement. "Brilliant! Let's synthesize a batch for testing immediately." The lab hummed with activity as human and Sakari scientists worked side by side, their previous mistrust forgotten in the face of scientific discovery. Sakari molecular synthesizers whirred, producing batches of the modified compound at an unprecedented rate. Days later, Kane stood before a wall of screens, addressing the leaders of Earth's nations. "The initial human trials have been successful. We're scaling up production now, but distribution will be our greatest challenge." General Graves, newly promoted, stepped forward. "I've developed a classified network to ensure the vaccine reaches every corner of the Sakari Empire. We'll be using a combination of military transports and civilian freighters to avoid detection by hostile elements." As the meeting concluded, Kane turned to find Zalara waiting. The Sakari ambassador's expression was troubled. "We've received reports from Cryaxis," she said softly. "The situation there is volatile. Vaccine shortages have led to widespread unrest." Kane nodded grimly. I'll go personally to oversee distribution. We can't let this fragile alliance fall apart now. As he boarded the transport bound for Cryaxis, Kane knew the true test of humanity's commitment lay ahead. The stars beckoned, full of both promise and peril. The transport ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace, revealing the scarred surface of Cryaxis below. Kane gripped the chairs of his seat, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. Atmospheric entry in 2 minutes, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. As they descended through wispy clouds, Kane's eyes widened at the devastation below. Once thriving cities lay in ruins, vast agricultural fields reduced to ashen wastelands. The crimson death's toll was etched into the very landscape. The ship touched down on a makeshift landing pad outside the planetary capital. A small welcoming party waited, led by a familiar face. Admiral Graves, Kane said, clasping the newly minted sector governor's hand. Or should I say, Governor now? Graves managed a tired smile. Just Marcus is fine, Alex. We've been through too much for formalities. As they walked towards a nearby prefab command center, Graves lowered his voice. The situation here is precarious. Food riots in the southern hemisphere. Pockets of plague resurgence in the north. We're hanging on by a thread. Kane nodded grimly. That's why I'm here. We need to shore up support for your governorship and lay the groundwork for long-term stability. Inside the command center, a whirlwind of activity greeted them. Humans and Sakari worked side by side, coordinating relief efforts and maintaining fragile supply lines. At a central holotable, Dr. Reeves and Thule hunched over a swirling mass of data. Ambassador, Reeves said, looking up, you're just in time. We've identified a new threat. Thule manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a cellular structure. A plant pathogen, unlike anything we've seen before. It's decimating what's left of the agri-world's crops. Kane's brow furrowed. Any leads on its origin? That's the truly concerning part, Reeves said. Initial analysis suggests it's artificial, a remnant of some ancient weapon system. The machine wars, Thule added, mandibles clicking in agitation. A dark chapter in our history we thought long buried. Kane absorbed the information, mind racing. We need more resources, more minds working on this. What if we hosted a galactic summit on Earth? Bring in experts from across known space? Graves nodded slowly. Risky, but it could work. I'll need to clear it with Commander Thrax first. As Kane prepared to make the call that could reshape galactic politics, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security feeds flashed to life, showing chaos erupting in the streets outside. Zaxian loyalists, Graves growled, recognizing the insignias on the attackers. They must have infiltrated the local population. Kane's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. So much for a smooth transition. Graves was already barking orders into his comm unit. Secure the perimeter. Get our VIPs to the shelters. As they raced through the corridors, Kane knew the real work was only beginning. The fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see if humanity could rise to the challenge. Kane's heart raced as he and Graves sprinted through the chaotic streets of Cryaxis' capital. Plasma bolts sizzled past, leaving scorch marks on crumbling buildings. The Zaxian loyalists were relentless in their pursuit. This way, Graves shouted, gesturing toward a narrow alley. They ducked inside, pressing themselves against the cool metal walls as a group of insurgents thundered past. We need to get off-world, Kane panted, checking his comm device. The situation here is deteriorating too rapidly. Graves nodded grimly. Agreed, but we can't abandon Cryaxis entirely. I have an idea. Months later, Admiral Marcus Graves stood on the bridge of the newly christened Earth vessel, Emissary, gazing out at the glittering skyline of Elysium. The diplomatic tour had been grueling, but effective. Humanity's stock in the galaxy was rising. Docking procedures complete, Admiral, his Sakari helmsman reported. Thank you, Lieutenant, Graves replied. He turned to Dr. Eliza Reeves, who was fiddling nervously with her datapad. Ready for your big moment? Reeves managed a weak smile. As I'll ever be? The Xenobiology Symposium was held in a vast amphitheater, its curved walls adorned with holographic representations of alien flora and fauna. Reeves took a deep breath as she approached the podium, acutely aware of the thousands of multifaceted eyes fixed upon her. "Distinguished colleagues," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Today I present to you a paradigm shift in our understanding of interspecies disease resistance." As Reeves spoke, detailing the intricate dance between human microbiomes and immune responses, the audience leaned forward in rapt attention. Graves, watching from the wings, couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. After the lecture, as Reeves fielded an eager crowd of potential research partners, a tall, willowy Elysian approached. Her iridescent scales shimmered with an almost hypnotic quality. "Dr. Reeves," the Elysian said, her voice melodic, "I am Professor Vera. Your work is revolutionary. I wonder if you might be interested in a private tour of our Xenogarden preserves." Reeves' eyes lit up. "I'd be honored, Professor." The Xenogarden caverns were a marvel of bioengineering. Bioluminescent flora cast everything in an otherworldly glow, while strange creatures skittered and slithered in the shadows. "This is incredible," Reeves breathed, her scientific mind racing with possibilities. Vira led her deeper into the caverns, past increasingly exotic specimens. "What I'm about to show you is not strictly sanctioned," she said, her voice lowered. "But your status as a representative of humanity affords us certain flexibilities." They emerged into a vast chamber. At its center, contained within a shimmering force field, was a mass of glistening, ever-shifting matter. "The xenogel," Vira explained, "capable of regenerating entire limbs in seconds. Imagine the possibilities if we could harness its power." Reeves stepped closer, mesmerized. "We need to study this immediately. I'll contact Earth for approval." An explosion rocked the cavern, sending both women stumbling. Alarms blared as the force field fluctuated dangerously. "Insurgents!" Vira cried out. "They're trying to destroy the Xenogarden." On Earth, Kane's secure comm channel crackled to life. "Sir," a breathless voice reported, "we have a situation on Elysium. Dr. Reeves is in danger." Kane's blood ran cold. He immediately contacted Graves, who was already mobilizing a rescue team. "I'm on my way," Graves growled, his heart made. "But these damn Sakari bureaucrats are slowing us down." "I'll see what I can do from my end," Kane replied, his mind racing. He opened a channel to an old ally. "Admiral Thule, I need a favor." Graves and his team fought their way through Elysium's streets, now choked with panicked civilians and pockets of insurgent resistance. Every second felt like an eternity, knowing Reeves was trapped below. Finally reaching the Xenogarden entrance, they found Vira, her scales dulled with pain. "Deeper," she gasped, pointing a trembling hand toward the darkened tunnels. "Hurry!" Graves plunged into the caverns, his team fanning out behind him. Strange creatures lashed out from the shadows, their bioluminescent appendages leaving burning welts on exposed skin. "Reeves!" Graves called out, his voice echoing off the cavern walls. "Where are you?" A faint cry answered him, barely audible over the sound of crumbling rock. Graves sprinted toward it, his heart pounding. He found Reeves trapped behind a fallen pillar, the xenogel oozing dangerously close. As Graves struggled to lift the massive stone, he felt a burning sensation creep up his arms. "The gel," Reeves warned, her voice weak. "Don't let it touch you." But it was too late. Graves could feel his cells begin to shift and change as the xenogel's influence spread. He gritted his teeth against the pain, focusing all his strength on freeing Reeves. With a final heave, the pillar shifted. Reeves scrambled free, but Graves collapsed, his body racked with spasms. "Marcus!" Reeves cried out, cradling his head. She could see the changes spreading rapidly across his skin, a kaleidoscope of alien textures and colors. Above, Thule's voice crackled over the comm. "Extraction team en route. Hold on, my friends." As consciousness began to fade, Graves locked eyes with Reeves. "Save me," he whispered. "If anyone can, it's you." Reeves nodded, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. She knew that the next few hours would push the boundaries of both human and Sakari medicine to their absolute limits. Limits. Alarms blared as the extraction team burst into the cavern. Thul's voice crackled over the comm. "We're here! Hold on!" Reeves cradled Graves' convulsing form, her eyes wide with horror as alien textures rippled across his skin. "He's changing," she gasped. "The Xenogel—" Sakari medics swarmed around them, their movements precise despite the chaos. One pressed a hypospray against Graves' neck, his muscles instantly going slack. "Quarantine protocols engaged," a medic barked. "Move!" They whisked Graves onto a hover stretcher, a shimmering containment field snapping into place around him. Reeves stumbled after them, her own skin tingling ominously. "Doctor, you've been exposed as well," a medic said, guiding her onto another stretcher. "We need to get you both to the biocontainment facility immediately." The world blurred as they raced through Elysium's streets. Reeves caught glimpses of panicked faces, flashing emergency lights, the looming bulk of a Sakari medical frigate. Inside the ship's sterile hold, Reeves watched helplessly as Graves thrashed against his restraints. His flesh rippled and shifted, defying all attempts at stabilization. "His cells are in a constant state of flux," a Sakari xenobiologist reported, mandibles clicking in agitation. "Our standard treatments are ineffective." Reeves' mind raced, fighting through the fog of her own exposure. "Wait," she said, sitting up despite the protests of her caretakers. "My research, the human microbiome." She outlined her theory, fingers flying across a datapad as she composed a desperate countermeasure. The Sakari scientists listened intently, their initial skepticism giving way to cautious hope. Hours blurred into days as they worked feverishly to halt Graves's metamorphosis. Reeves pushed herself to the brink of collapse, her own body fighting off the Xenogel's influence, even as she battled to save her friend. Finally, agonizingly, Graves' vitals stabilized. The constant flux of his cells slowed, then settled into a new equilibrium. Reeves sagged with relief, only to gasp as Graves' eyes snapped open. "Marcus," she whispered, approaching cautiously. Graves sat up, flexing his hands experimentally. His skin had a metallic sheen, muscles rippling with newfound strength. "Eliza," he said, his voice deeper, resonant. "What's happened to me?" Before she could answer, the door hissed open. Kane strode in, flanked by a contingent of Earth security forces. His eyes widened at the sight of Graves. "My God," Kane breathed. "It's true." Graves stood, towering over them all. "Ambassador," he said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice, "I feel different." Kane nodded grimly. "We need to get you both back to Earth immediately. The situation here is volatile." As if to punctuate his words, distant explosions rumbled through the facility. Kane's comm unit chirped urgently. "Riots in the Southern District," a voice reported. "Anti-human sentiment is spreading fast." Kane's face hardened. "We're leaving, now." As they hurried through the corridors, Reeves couldn't tear her eyes from Graves. He moved with inhuman grace, his every step radiating power. "The Xenogel," she murmured. "It's completely rewritten your genetic structure." Graves nodded, a mix of wonder and trepidation in his eyes. "I can feel it, Eliza. The potential. It's overwhelming." They emerged onto a landing pad, a sleek Earth shuttle waiting. As they boarded, Reeves caught sight of a furious crowd in the distance, signs denouncing human interference held high. The shuttle's engines roared to life, launching them into the star-studded blackness of space. As Elysium receded behind them, Reeves knew their ordeal was just the beginning. The true test for Graves, for humanity, for the entire galaxy, was just beginning. The shuttle docked with a soft thud, its airlock hissing open to reveal the sprawling expanse of Xena's lush landscape. Graves stepped out first, his altered physiology adapting instantly to the planet's slightly higher gravity. Reeves followed, her eyes widening at the sight before them. "Welcome to Xenorous City," Kane announced, gesturing toward the gleaming structures rising from the verdant plains. "Our new sovereign xenobiology preserve." In the months that followed, Xenorous City blossomed into a scientific utopia under Graves and Reeves' leadership. The former xenogarden now stretched across hectares of carefully cultivated biomes, each a living laboratory of interspecies collaboration. Reeves stood in her state-of-the-art lab, surrounded by holographic displays of Graves's cellular structure. "The xenogel integration is remarkable," she murmured, manipulating the image to zoom in on a particularly intriguing protein chain. "It's not just regeneration, Marcus. Your entire genetic code has been rewritten." Graves flexed his hand, watching as the skin shimmered with an iridescent sheen. "I can feel it, Eliza. The potential is staggering." Their research progressed at a breakneck pace. In tightly controlled biospheres, plant and animal hybrids thrived, their DNA interwoven with alien genetic material. Each successful integration opened new frontiers in medicine, agriculture, and biotechnology. But progress bred fear. On a secure comm channel, Kane's face appeared, his expression grim. "We've got a problem. General Zaxxas is stirring up trouble in the Sakari Empire. He's calling Xenarist a xeno-alterist threat." Graves's eyes narrowed. "We knew there would be pushback. How bad is it?" Kane's response was cut short by a thunderous explosion. Alarms blared as the lab's emergency protocols engaged. "We're under attack," Reeves shouted, already racing toward the containment units. "It's a xenovirus." Chaos erupted throughout Xenarist. Graves mobilized defenses, enforcing a full quarantine as the virus spread with terrifying speed. In the streets, infected researchers writhed in agony, their bodies twisting into nightmarish new forms. In her inner sanctum, Reeves worked feverishly, her hands flying over holographic interfaces. "The virus is mutating faster than we can track it," she reported, her voice strained. "Each treatment only spawns new strains." Graves entered, his altered physiology providing some resistance to the contagion. "We're out of options, Eliza. We need to use the purging virus." Reeves hesitated, understanding the implications. "It's untested, Marcus. We don't know what it will do to us. We don't have a choice." With trembling hands, Reeves loaded the experimental virus into an injector. She pressed it against Graves's neck, then her own. As the serum coursed through their veins, they both collapsed, their bodies racked with convulsions. Hours later, Reeves awoke to find her lab in ruins. She stood marveling at the newfound strength coursing through her body. Graves stirred beside her, his form now a perfect fusion of human and alien. "It worked," he breathed, examining his transformed hands. Outside, the city had fallen silent. The infected lay still, the xenovirus eradicated. But as Reeves and Graves emerged, they found themselves surrounded by a crowd of mutated survivors, their eyes filled with awe. "The primordial xenarchs," one whispered, falling to his knees. "They have come to lead us." Graves and Reeves exchanged troubled glances, realizing that their victory had come at a steep price. In saving Xenarist, they had inadvertently birthed a new species, and perhaps a new religion. In the distance, sirens wailed as Earth ships approached, drawn by the chaos. And beyond, in the depths of space, General Zaxxas smiled, knowing that his warnings of a xeno-threat had been proven true. General Zaxxas's face loomed large on the holographic display, his mandibles clicking with scarcely controlled fury. "The abominations on Xenarist must be purged," he snarled, addressing a sea of agitated Sakari civilians. "For the purity of our empire." The transmission cut abruptly as Kane deactivated the projector. He turned to face Graves and Reeves, his expression grim. "It's worse than we feared. Zaxxas has whipped the entire sector into a xenophobic frenzy." Reeves ran a hand through her hair, now streaked with iridescent strands. "The xenopurge virus saved us from the initial attack, but at what cost?" She pulled up a holographic display of her own cellular structure, the alien patterns pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. "We're not human anymore, Marcus. Not entirely." Graves nodded, his metallic skin catching the light. "Post-human xenohybrids," he mused. Evolution accelerated. A tremor shook the facility, and alarms blared to life. Kane's comm unit crackled urgently. "Ambassador, Sakari warships have entered orbit. They're establishing a blockade." Graves' eyes narrowed. "So it begins." He strode towards the command center, his movements fluid and precise. Initiate defense protocols. All non-essential personnel to the shelters. As they hurried through the corridors, Reeves couldn't help but notice the reverent gazes of the colonists they passed. Many bore signs of xenogenic mutation, scaled skin, compound eyes, bioluminescent patches. They whispered as Graves and Reeves passed, words like primordials and xenarchs floating in their wake. In the command center, a three-dimensional map of Xenarist and its surrounding space flickered to life. Graves studied it intently, mapping out defensive strategies with superhuman speed. "We're outgunned and outnumbered," he stated flatly, "but we have advantages they can't anticipate." Reeves nodded, already pulling up research data on a nearby console. "I'll redirect our xenobiology teams. If we can't cure the mutations, we can at least try to stabilize and enhance them." Kane's expression was troubled as he watched them work. "I need to return to Earth immediately," he said. "The Council must be made to see reason before this escalates further." As Kane's shuttle departed, a transmission cut through the static. A robed figure appeared on screen, eyes glowing with an inner fire. "Primordial Xenarchs," the cultist intoned. "We await your divine guidance." Graves and Reeves exchanged a look of mingled concern and possibility. The devotion of these xenocultists was unexpected, but it might be the edge they needed to survive. "Prepare your followers," Graves commanded, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "Xenarist will need every defender in the trials to come." As the cultist bowed reverently, Reeves leaned in close to Graves. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. "We're not gods, Marcus. We're scientists." Graves' expression was unreadable. "Perhaps we're both now, Eliza, and perhaps that's exactly what humanity needs to survive in this new frontier." In the labs below, vats of Xenogel pulsed with potential, waiting to reshape the future of an entire species. Above, Sakari warships loomed, their weapons primed, and in the heart of Xenarist, two former humans stood at the precipice of a transformation that would echo across the stars. The fate of multiple civilizations hung in the balance, with Xenarist as the crucible of change. Whatever came next, there would be no returning to the old order of things. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with tension as Admiral Graves and Dr. Reeves took their seats. Holographic displays flickered, showing the assembled representatives of a dozen species. At the center, the Sakari Imperator's mandibles twitched nervously. "We welcome Xenarist's ambassadors," the Imperator announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "May this mark a new era of cooperation." Graves nodded, his metallic skin gleaming under the harsh lights. Reeves noticed the sidelong glances from other delegates, a mix of curiosity and barely concealed unease. As the session progressed, discussing trade agreements and security protocols, Reeves's comm unit vibrated. She glanced down, her enhanced eyes decoding the encrypted message in an instant. "Marcus," she whispered, leaning close. "Situation on Crex 5. We need to go. Now." They excused themselves, citing urgent Xenarist business. As they strode towards their shuttle, Kane fell into step beside them. "I've seen the reports," Kane said, his face grim. "This is bad, isn't it?" Graves nodded, already interfacing with the shuttle's systems. "Worse than we thought. Zaxxus's fingerprints are all over this." The shuttle rocketed through space, its xenotech engines pushing the limits of physics. As they approached Crex 5, the devastation became clear. The once verdant agricultural world was now a nightmarish landscape of writhing fungal growths and sickly bioluminescence. Reeves' enhanced senses reeled from the assault of data. "The mutagenic compounds," she gasped. "They're not just toxic, they're evolving." Graves coordinated with Xenarist response teams, his cybernetically augmented mind processing multiple data streams simultaneously. "We need to contain this before it spreads off-world." As they donned protective gear and prepared to disembark, Kane received an urgent transmission from Solera. His face paled as he listened. "It's the Imperial Cryogenics Preserve," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The DNA Codex Vault. It's gone." Reeves' eyes widened in horror. "The Sakari baselines? All of them?" Kane nodded, his expression haunted. "Zaxxus, it has to be. He's forced our hand. As they stepped onto Crex 5's corrupted surface, the full weight of their situation crashed down upon them. The screams of mutating colonists echoed across the fungal plains. In the distance, Sakari warships engaged in fratricidal combat, their crews already succumbing to uncontrolled genomic shifts. Graves activated a quarantine field, his voice steely with determination. We need to get back to Xenarist. Now. This is bigger than we imagined. As their shuttle lifted off, leaving behind a world consumed by alien hunger, Reeves stared out at the stars. Each point of light now represented not just a potential ally or enemy, but a vector for an unimaginable plague of evolution run amok. "What have we done?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Graves placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch a reminder of their shared transformation. "What we had to, Eliza. Now we need to do what only we can." The shuttle accelerated, racing back to Xenarist, their last bastion of hope in a galaxy unraveling at the seams.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.